Hey there, let's get going. Anyone had a chance to improve their score last week?
Not yet. I started looking at some stuff, but I haven't got very far yet. So I wanted to try, so the thing about using like the grouped context and anchor. So from one of the ones that we looked at last week, where they sort of took all of the other text in that group and stuck it on the end of their encoding. The only trouble I had was like it made like the encoding string so big, and I tried to train with that, but it ran out of memory, so I didn't get very far with that. So I'm just running it again now and just like limiting the length to cut it down. And the other thing I'd wanted to look at was like the adversarial weight thing. I haven't got around to implementing that either, but I did watch a good video by Ian Goodfellow, one of the guys that wrote sort of one of the first papers on it. So it was good, but I haven't got around to actually implementing it yet.
Do you have the link for that video, Steve?
Yeah, I'll put it on. Yeah, I'd never heard of the adversarial thing before. It's like, it's very interesting. It's the fact that you can sort of take a picture of a panda, whatever, and sort of slightly modify it so as you wouldn't even notice that it had a difference, and suddenly it thinks it's like an airplane or something.
Yeah, I think in the video, or I should say in the picture domain or image domain, I think this was, especially when it came to GANs, I think this was one of the, and even before that actually, to trick the model into producing garbage results. And there were attempts to do that, and then I think from there it branched off into how do you make the model more robust. But yeah, I'd be very interested in listening to the guy lecture on that topic. And then I think Arto said last time, right, that it originally came from image, but now has moved into the NLP domain.
Yeah. So like that, I've just put the link up there now. So it's like Ian Goodfellow. I think he's like just like sort of being a guest lecturer at some course at Stanford, I think. But yeah, like it explains his original paper, which like is just about the adversarial examples and how people can attack your network to make pandas think they're monkeys and stuff. But yeah, from there, people have taken it and might do the adversarial training, which he doesn't really go into there. And so I haven't got around to like sort of the adversarial weight stuff, which is just to make your any type of neural network, like it's NLP or images or whatever, make them generalize better. But this one here, like it gives like a very good sort of grounding to help understand what it's on about.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think those kind of resources actually help, get, at least for me, the intuition behind it. And then, that makes the implementation kind of make sense because you at least understand why you're doing certain things.
Yeah, because I started reading the paper, and the paper, like just reading about it doesn't sort of really make it that clear. Whereas like watching that video first and then going back to the paper, it helps really understand what's happening. So I haven't found one yet about the AWP one though. It would be good.
Yeah. But yeah, YouTube is really helpful in those kinds of things. There people just take the time to explain stuff. Arto, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add to this adversarial thing that interestingly, this DiBerta guys, they call their technique that they use for fine-tuning, scale invariant fine-tuning. So it's SIFT. And So the name itself, it's like it says that this adversarial, and basically what they do this virtual adversarial training, some modification of it. And basically what it does, it helps with fine-tuning very large models like this. So for DBERTA, the largest one were like some like really large models, and it helps with like avoiding problems with memorizing the data set, stuff like that. Yes.
Interesting. So it also kind of somehow prevents or minimizes memorization by the model?
Yeah. So in this, in one of the papers, I think they said that that helped also with like making this pipeline of fine-tuning large models. Basically, this adversarial training helped them scale up the model size when fine-tuning without losing the like this generalization of or something like that. Yes.
I see. Because I think one of the criticisms I've seen of GPT-3 kind of models, and it seems legitimate, is that they tend to memorize a lot of the stuff, and that's kind of what they spit out sometimes. And you can kind of obviously do things to take them into the corner of the space where you can see that they're memorizing stuff. So it's interesting if the adversarial technique somehow reduces or minimizes that, for lack of a better word, that desire on the part of these models to just memorize rather than to generalize.
Yeah. I think I'll need to review what they said there in the paper, but it's kind of makes some intuitive sense that you make the basically it helps model to avoid this sharp minima and to search for some kind of flat minimum in loss.
Interesting. Yeah. And sorry, back to your comment, Steve, that you limited the tokens after you added all of the additional tokens. So did you just arbitrarily chop at some max length, or what did you do?
Yeah, so like in my original notebook, which was just using like the standard anchor and target concatenated together, it had like a maximum length of 133 on its length or whatever. So yeah, like when I add in like all of the extra information of all of the targets joined together, it was putting the length up to like 526 or something. So yeah, just in the tokenizer, you can just like specify that you want to truncate at the maximum length. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm just truncating at the same length as I had the other one. So like it'll help me see as well, is it the information, like the extra information giving me a boost, or is it the fact that like it's gone from having like a small input string into having a much larger one? I noticed the guy.
You were truncating it back to 133.
Yeah, so that's what I'm training at the minute. So I haven't got any results back from that yet. Yeah, so previously my length was maximum length of 133, but like obviously it was mostly sort of padded with zeros. Like that was the biggest length I could have. Whereas now, yeah, like it's like still truncating at 133, and so yeah, like it will be chopping some information off, but like that information is the grouped target information. So
the 133 was that the default of the model, or did you specify it?
In my previous model before I had the grouping, yeah, so like when it makes up the text string by concatenating like the target and the anchor and the context. Then I put it through like just a loop to find like the maximum length of the encoded string. And like in that case, the maximum length was 133. So
it's a feature of the data and your approach, but not of the model per se.
Yeah. So like as a first cut or whatever, I'll just try it with, so it's got the grouped stuff now, but it's like still limiting to 133. So I'll run that and see what that gives me, and then I can try increasing the length after that. I noticed that the person that finished second, like they've got like an ensemble, and like their ensemble, like that's basically one of the things they did was just have different models increasing the maximum length of their string each time. So from their token. Oh, one other thing, by the way, when I'm on, I also noticed in this competition, luckily I didn't do very well because it turned out I got disqualified. I couldn't find after the competition finished. Yeah, like I was like there and I had a position on the leaderboard, and then I disappeared. And yeah, I was disqualified. And I think the reason was I was disqualified was early on in the competition. I shared a notebook privately with Terence to show him how to make a submission. And they've got the rule about no private code sharing. So I think what happens is at the end of the competition, they go through and they see, have you got like any notebooks that you've privately shared from the competition with somebody that wasn't on your team? And if you do, you're automatically thrown out. So luckily I didn't do very well.
Code, so they run a code to check whether you do that and stuff.
Yeah, so I think they must just like run through and take a look at like all notebooks that are linked to the competition or that use the competition data, and then see if any have been privately shared with somebody who wasn't in your team. And if you've done that, then you're disqualified. So
yeah, actually, if you post it publicly, though, they don't care. But I think if you and I think the other thing would be an entire notebook rather than code snippets or whatever.
Yeah, but it was like Terence was trying to do a submission or whatever, and he hadn't been able to. So I had a notebook that just like sort of trained and submitted. It wasn't a very good notebook, but I just privately shared it
Actually,
with him.
The better thing to do would be to just post on Slack. Anyway, I mean, the other thing is if you had shared it on Slack with this group, then it wouldn't. But the fact that you shared it on Kaggle with Terence and he was not in your team, I think that's kind of interesting.
Does that mean if you two, like if you and Terence had teamed up, would it have been okay then? Like,
I think so. Yeah, I think it would have been fine if we'd ended up teaming up at the end, but because I'm not sure, does it matter if you're in a team at the point when you share it or not? I don't know.
So I guess he was also disqualified, probably.
Probably, yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to him to ask him, but yeah. So luckily, I did so rubbish on the competition. It doesn't really bother me. I would have been annoyed if I'd sort of been in like a medal-winning position there. But luckily I wasn't.
Yeah, sorry, I joined a bit late. So did you try? Have you got like a score after trying including that magic trick?
No, not yet, because like during the week.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I just went back to like a single model, and just one fold of it, and then so like it was just the basic model with putting the string together in the standard way, and I've got a score for that. And then I tried to train the one with the trick of using the grouping, but yeah, because of the fact that the encoding ended up so big, it ran out of memory, and I had to like reduce the batch size, and then it didn't train and stuff. So I'm just retraining it now. So hopefully I would have
you talked about this guy using different max lengths in his ensemble. Like what kind of values was he using? Do you know?
Yeah, so like as I say, like when I join on all the group ones together, I end up with a string that's about just over 500 in length. So yeah, so
Right.
he was for his ensemble going between say 120 and 500, and like that's how
Okay.
he was like sort of making his ensemble. Really, was just by changing like the length of the encoded string.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one that finished second. So like
Uh-huh.
his notebook's available on there. So if you just take a look at his notebook, you'll see what he's up to.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, I think you just trashed my submission since I was even further behind you.
I did what?
No, I'm saying by saying you didn't do well at all, I was happy actually. I was in the, I don't know, maybe 15, 20% or 10% or something like that. And you were like, I did rubbish because I'm like, hey,
Well,
slow now. I was happy about myself and you just made me feel sad all over again.
well, now you could be even happier because you beat me.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But actually, I mean, it kind of goes to one reason why we were previously only competing in competitions that had ended, because you don't have these problems. You get a score and you can be happy or sad on your own.
Yeah.
There's no disqualification.
Yeah, like I'd forgotten all about the private code sharing thing. So I'm pretty sure I'd done it before. So I don't know why they got me this time, but I'll remember in the future.
Yeah, no, I think it's because previously it didn't matter, Steve, because now if you do it, it won't, right? Once the competition ends, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that because earlier when we were competing in competitions that had ended, and we switched, I think, like 2 competitions back.
Yeah.
And I was careful. I mean, we only have about 5 people, so it's not a big deal because up to 5 people you can share. But then there is this rule where then you can't submit individually. Those 5 people would need to form a team, regardless of, whether they are actually a team or not. They have to be a team. So I think going forward, if you just make sure you share it on Slack, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and like as I say, it was just a notebook showing how to submit. So if I'd shared it publicly,
Yeah.
it would have been okay as well.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Well, the notebook needs to be public, right? It's not enough just to share it on the Slack channel here, right? I mean,
no, if you
I guess
shared
it
it
needs
in
to be
Slack,
public, right?
yeah,
Okay.
no, if he had shared it in Slack, he wouldn't be disqualified because he's not sharing it on Kaggle privately. That's
Yeah,
the
like
problem.
if
Sharing it privately on Kaggle.
Yeah, if I download the notebook from Kaggle just as a Jupyter notebook file and then put it up here on Slack, that would have been fine. It's the fact that
Yeah.
like I
Okay.
set its properties on Kaggle to be a private share, and that's
Okay.
how they caught me.
Right.
So
Yeah, private share, and the person is not part of your eventual team. So
Yeah.
they must have a script that runs at the end of the competition.
Yeah, because I couldn't figure out where my thing had gone. I was going to complain, and then I was reading their complaint form because I couldn't remember sharing anything. And then they said, "Have you privately shared any notebooks? Because we get thousands of people who share their notebooks and get disqualified." So I think it's a pretty common thing.
Interesting thing to remember. Anyone else try anything? Jack, Wave, Arato? I was too lazy this week to go back and submit. I'll probably try something this week.
No, I've not tried anything. But I do have a question about the padding after tokenization. Do you guys pad to the longest sample in the batch or to the overall maximum length?
I'm
yeah.
padding to the overall maximum length. Can you,
Okay.
if you pad to just the maximum one in a batch, does that not
Yeah.
cause a problem with the input to your model?
So I'm using Hugging Face trainer usually, and even if you don't, you can use this collator. So Hugging Face has a number of data collators. There is a thing called data collator with padding, which will automatically pad your batch to the longest input, and yeah, that works fine.
Is that
The
any
longest
different
of the
though than?
batch.
Could you repeat?
The longest of the batch, you mean?
Yeah, longest in the batch.
Okay. No, it's just like I read somewhere like if you do that, even though you're still stuck with your batch size is still limited by the overall maximum length. But if you but for batches that don't need to be padded to the overall maximum length, if you just pad it to the maximum length of the batch, it's still like the compute is still faster because
Yeah, true.
Good. So I need to, because I didn't know about that before, and so I wasn't using that option. I need to learn how to do that next time.
But if you've got one batch that has one big massive long string in it, and so like then everything in that batch gets padded to that big length, and then you've got another batch where it's only got short strings, and so you only pad to like the very short length. Does that not cause problems?
No, it doesn't. You are limited, like the maximum batch size, as Jack said, is limited by the longest batch. But from the point of view of compute, you won't have any problems at all with PyTorch. At least there might be problems with, for example, JAX, where when you're using like some framework that compiles your computation graph, then you will have problems, but it's not the case with PyTorch. So that's.
Right.
You mean TensorFlow?
Yeah, probably TensorFlow. I haven't worked much with TensorFlow for like anything where I was concerned about the computation time for a while, but with JAX there is this issue too.
Yeah, so I guess like it's because the transformer architecture it allows variable input lengths, right? That you can do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'll give that a go. Yeah, because I was just picking one maximum length for all data. I wasn't doing it per batch.
Yeah, it kind of you will just save some compute, nothing else. I mean, like the time for an epoch will be short term.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've been poking into the hardware aspects of it, given my background, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because you don't pad to the max all the time, so your sparsity and stuff reduces.
And if we go to this kind of compute part, you might want to, instead of padding to the maximum length, you might want to go to some multiple of 8. For some hardware, this matters. For other hardware, it doesn't. I think, for example, that for this P100s that are in Kaggle, it doesn't matter, if I'm not wrong. But for there are types of GPUs that like everything to be multiple of 8. Or something like that.
Yeah, in fact, if you use the tensor cores in any NVIDIA thing, it has to be multiple of 8. But I don't know whether PyTorch, whether the frameworks automatically utilize the tensor cores or not. I don't know that off the top of my head. And the other thing about it is that I recall is, I wanted to say, for example, nowadays the floating point 16 for inference, BF16, brain float 16, as they call it, is used by PyTorch automatically rather than having to set anything. So it kind of used this mixed precision mode automatically. Whereas earlier you had to kind of specify it and use a library for it and all that. And I think somewhere down the line in PyTorch version
is
1,
it when you like use this inference mode context manager, or is it done like either way?
that I don't know, but what I read is that you don't have to specify it and PyTorch automatically does that. But what I don't know is which of the things triggers it. What triggers it to utilize the bfloat16. It definitely does it during inference, but I don't know what triggers it.
But that's, again, it's only relevant for Ampere GPUs, right? Not for earlier ones.
Yeah, in fact, I have to also, even as I say that, I have to look at whether the version of GPUs, because I don't know that older GPUs supported BF16. CPUs do. GPUs may not, even up to and including Ampere. I'm not sure. But the Voltas, I think, do not support the bfloat16. They only do single precision floating point.
So for CPU, you will get with TensorFlow now, or not TensorFlow, PyTorch, you will get this bfloat16, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Automatically, because I remember in FastAI, he was using something like AWP or some such library that you needed to use in order to switch to, that reminds me, actually, GPUs do have float16, even though they don't have bfloat16. And float16 is used by, I think, the GPUs to reduce computation in inference. And I think PyTorch automatically switches to that as well in inference. And, with bfloat, there's literally no drop in accuracy, but with float, there might be, but it's very, very small. Okay.
Interesting. There are, like, in PyTorch, there are two context managers, like Torch no grad. You can use it for inference, or you can use Torch inference mode. And I wasn't like really making the difference. I knew this inference mode is like somewhat faster in some occasions, but maybe that's one of the reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely makes a difference. It makes a huge difference, obviously in training, but training, you need the accuracy, especially because of the weights and the derivatives. So they stick to the P32 in most cases. Any other things on the current competition? And by the way, I think I just saw that the prior one we did, the tabular one, is coming to an end shortly. So where are you at, Steve, on that one?
20th, I think. Yeah, so
cool.
I saw they're releasing the next set of results on the 6th of July. what's today? The 2nd of July. Yeah, so sometime this week they're releasing the next update, and then there'll be one final one on the day the competition closes, which is a couple of weeks away maybe. So there's 2 more
Cool.
updates.
So that's when you're in the medal then at 20th, or?
At the minute, I'm just outside the gold medals, but hopefully
That's really good.
hopefully I don't get disqualified again for something. But yeah.
Really nice. When competition ends, it probably would be really interesting to see how it like worked and maybe get some summary of what you've done. And
yeah, yeah, sure, like when it finishes or whatever. But yeah, so because of the fact that they're basing the sort of the competition, the private scores on constant updates over the 3-month period, so I may fall away like when the next update comes out, because like in the first update it was like set about 100th or something, and then it'd gone up to 13th, and now dropped back a bit. So when the next one comes out, I might drop away completely. So I'll have to wait and see.
But I think you should be okay, Steve, because I've been hovering in the 200s plus minus a few constantly, and that's my issue, or as I mentioned last time, is I struggled with this online concurrent current update versus just a static update, as I recall. That's and I think you mentioned you had both submissions, right? One dynamic and static, and I think the dynamic one is probably one that's doing good for you. But because the static is part of the ensemble, I think and I guess all I'm saying is you can't fall any lower than me, which seems to give a floor to your score anyway.
Well, actually, my dynamic model is the one that's slightly worse. It's the static one that's
really
got the best score. Yeah. Yeah. So like the dynamic one, it ended up I could only get one to train dynamically. Yeah. So it's like an ensemble of about 6 or 7 different types of model, and I could only get one of them to actually train dynamically. But yeah, so like that model is actually giving me, or that notebook's giving me a slightly worse score at the minute, but there's not a lot in it.
Interesting.
So I think it all
And I
depends
wonder
on
why
what's
I'm-
happening in the Chinese stock market. Yeah, so
yeah, that's true.
yeah, because like obviously like the data that we trained on was like quite a while ago, wasn't it? It was only up to 2021 or something, and then you've got
changes.
Yeah, so like all those static models, they were trained on sort of stuff that was coming in from lockdown times and things, and so the stock market probably behaves completely differently now. So.
Yeah. Okay. The one other thing I wanted to discuss was the next competition potentially, and I wanted to just check on what's active out there for now. I mean, maybe in the next week or two, there might be new competition showing up, but I just want to share the 2 or 3 that I've noticed. Let me know which one when you see my screen.
I can see a blank screen at the minute.
Oh.
I can see Chrome, but there's nothing in the window.
Yeah, the window is blank.
I can see your tabs from your Chrome window, but there's nothing in the main window.
Let me see, maybe it is. Now I think you should be able to see it. Let's see. Any luck?
No, that's worse. I can't see anything now.
Oh. It's weird. happening. Hang on, let me see whether this is the screen I need to share. Oops, I think my internet connection ran into some problems. Even I can't see it. That wouldn't help. Give me a minute. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Can't
Okay.
see your screen yet.
Okay, let me see whether I share it.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Oh boy. Okay, good. Yeah, something wrong with my internet meanwhile and stuff. Okay, so the things I wanted to mention are the top 3 or 4 of these seem to be the most relevant or interesting, unless people have other choices. Now, this 4th one on AI code is definitely interesting. Unfortunately, there's only a month to go.
Yeah, I'd seen that one. I'd seen that one when it first came out and thought it looked really interesting, but you know, as you say, there's not very long on it.
Yeah, there's not much left. The one I thought was of these 3, this one is interesting, just launched, I think. So we have a good runway to go. At the same time, given we've been fiddling with language and stuff, this one caught my eye as well. It has at least a couple of months to go. And it's an interesting one because it talks about somewhat of a different thing than just similarity and stuff. It's about effectiveness of the arguments within writing by 6 to 12th graders. So you have to kind of go into the context and begin to analyze kind of the semantics of stuff, which I haven't seen before. Like how good is the argument that people are making. So, and then this one is more of classification, I think. This is a classic default prediction, but if you do well here, they might even want to interview you. It's trying to improve the American Express default prediction.
Is that why it's got like 2,000 teams already?
Oh, because I think of the money and the fact that it's actually very practical in the sense that they've actually, if you look into it, they say that if you come up with a good idea and you are in, you know, among the top medalists, then we actually will deploy your ideas into production at Amex, and we would even potentially consider you for a hire.
I was reading some notebooks from this competition, and so it seems quite interesting because the training data is about 50 gigabytes size. So yeah, so that makes it sort of extra interesting because you can't fit everything at once. Yeah. So there are like various approaches that people have used to pre-process the data, you know, to compress it and to yeah, and like to train it. Yeah, so if you're into that kind of thing, it might be interesting.
The trouble
Yeah,
with competitions like
unfortunately,
that is we struggle with really large data sets because obviously you run out of GPU time when you do it on Kaggle, and you run out of disk space if you do it on something like Collab.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the people who
So
have their own GPUs are okay.
so
yeah,
okay,
that's what I
I'll
was
just
about
let you
to say.
know.
That
So so the original size is 50 gig, but I was reading this notebook where they've compressed it to 5 gig already. And
Well,
yeah,
the same data.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so
That sounds more reasonable, yeah, because on Colab I've only
I
got
was quite
100
impressed with
gig or
that,
whatever.
actually.
So if it was 50 gig, I wouldn't be able to take part at all.
yeah, in fact, we suffered. I think wasn't it the 2 competitions back or something? The one we didn't end up, or at least I didn't end up making a submission on. That was just too massive and ran into all kinds of problems, and it became a.
Yeah, there was
It's
one
the,
competition with medical images or whatever, and basically it was like just the data was so large that we couldn't handle it really. And
Yeah, and it became
if you're
a,
in a university or something, you're fine. Like if you're in a
right,
university with
right.
big
It became
computers,
a data processing exercise, and we were literally unable to do anything in the machine learning domain as much as just. I remember, Steve, you were the only one who even ended up being able to make a submission, I think.
but I thought like if it's like a computer vision challenge, then you're using deep learning techniques, and in that case, you can just use like smaller batch sizes or train on a subset.
yeah, but your
That's not
problem
normally
was
a problem, right?
we weren't able to get anywhere near to the people at the top of the leaderboard because of the fact that they could like run on full high definition images and stuff, and we were like having to use lower definitions and smaller batch sizes and subsets of the training set.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, and it became very frustrating very quickly because you could see that a clear distinction between people who, as Steve was saying, who were using Colab or Kaggle resources, and then people who were using their own computing, and it was 2 separate worlds, and that's very frustrating. So, in fact, one of our criteria for choosing competitions was, hey, the data needs to be reasonable enough that we can do something with it.
Okay, then with the feedback price, I noticed that one of the interesting things with this is that it not only evaluates on your model's score in terms of like the metric, it also evaluates its efficiency. So prices like, so there are separate prices, like there's a price for like how accurate your model is, and then there's another price for how efficient, how fast your model is. And that's something that I've not seen before.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I didn't look into it, but thanks for that, Jack. I think I did see that. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, and this one I think just showed up maybe last week or something. So I haven't spent any time looking at that either. But given that we were into NLP and stuff, I wouldn't mind, going for one more NLP before we switch to maybe back to images and stuff. We've been doing images in various ways for a while. So, and I wouldn't mind kind of increasing my knowledge of the use of Hugging Face and NLP related tools a little bit more. So I think, please weigh in on at least what your preferences are in these spaces, and if anything else shows up, I'll keep an eye out. But most of the rest of them have very little time left. Of course, we could still, if people are interested, we could always choose this one if we find it, still very interesting, because as we have discussed before, doesn't mean that just because the competition ends doesn't mean that everything gets shut down. You can still continue to submit and get scores and stuff. So if there is a very good reason why people would prefer the last one, this one compared to the feedback prize, I'm open to that as well, because there's nothing which says we have to end it when the competition ends.
When exactly does the feedback prize competition end? You can take a look at that one, just as timeline. Yeah, my trouble is I'm going to be away for most of August, so.
Okay. I think it's
on the timeline.
End of August. Last week. So if you're gone, that might be an issue.
Yeah, I'll be away then.
Yeah, pretty much just this month left, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are some of the reasons I'm saying if there are people, if we want to look at this one, that ends end of July or August 11th.
Yeah.
But, we can continue to.
There's fewer people in that competition than I thought there would be.
This one, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, considering how much money they're giving out, there's not that many teams.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. And I also think there's a very good baseline solution for this competition. I noticed there's this.
Interesting. Also, this one seems to continue beyond the end date, which kind of makes it a pain, because at least for us, right? Because if we want to continue to participate, then I don't know I don't know how. I have to think about a little bit of how that will work in this case. Because the competition doesn't end on that date. It continues like the stock one.
Right.
But isn't it just like leaderboard updates, like with the Ubiquant? Like you don't need to do anything.
Yes, but the point I was making is, if you don't make a submission, or if your submission is after the competition ends, they won't take that into consideration on updating with the private leaderboard.
Okay.
Right? So, because they would only evaluate with the ongoing private leaderboard those submissions that were made in time before the end of the competition. Whereas, for example, for the patent one, we can make changes in submit and it will run on the hidden private and public now. Whereas because the competition is ongoing after the end date, submissions in this competition past the end date will not get evaluated on the private data.
Right, yeah.
Let's see, and then when does this end? My internet acting up again. Anyway, don't want to waste your time. Take a look at those and weigh in on Slack on which of those you prefer and why. And then, I'll also see whether I can make a submission in those, and the other consideration is usually data size. So, from what Jack said, it looks like the American Express one could be a problem, but if somebody has reduced it to 5 gigs, then it may not be that big a deal. But anyway, take a look and weigh in on it. And FYI, I think if any of you are interested, there's a new book study group forming on Sundays on NLP with transformers at 8 a.m.
Are you doing that as well?
It says you're the host now, Jack.
Why?
I think three of us has been kicked out.
Oh,
When he says 8 a.m., I presume he means 8 a.m. American California time. I'm not
Okay.
sure. Where are you, Jack? You in London?
That's correct. Can you hear me still?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah, I thought you'd been kicked
Yeah,
out.
I don't know, my computer internet seems to be having all kinds of problems today. It just keeps losing its connection, which is the reason that I think I got kicked out. But yeah, it is 8 a.m. Pacific, Steve. It's 4 p.m. I think your British time.
Right.
yeah. So I'm like 7+. So.
Where are you, Jack?
In East Asia.
All right. What country are you in?
And Taiwan.
All right.
Yeah.
What time is it there for you at the minute then?
It's like nearly 2 in the morning.
Really?
Yeah.
And you get up for this? You're very keen.
No, I didn't get up for this.
You stay
I
awake
go
for
to
this?
sleep afterwards. Yeah.
Right. Very impressive.
Actually, it's this time is sort of normal for me.
You still there, any of us?
Yeah. So
Who's running this book thing?
I think it's Shamsuddin who joined for a little while in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And he was there as part of some prior study groups, I think. So he initiated it. It's kind of starting tomorrow. I think tomorrow is just a discussion about the logistics, but starting next week, it'll go on a weekly basis. I think I believe they will figure out some of the stuff as they move forward. It's a fairly decent book choice, I think, because it's written by guys from Hugging Face. So, it can kind of, I think, at least I intend to join it because, as I said, it will kind of force me to get closer and actually put the Hugging Face interface to use, which I haven't done in a while, or I kind of haven't done at all in any consistent basis.
Yeah. Have you got a link to the information about it? Is it in Slack somewhere?
Yeah, I'll post it. I'll post it. I think there's a Slack group called NLP with Transformers that got formed, and I'll post about it too in Kaggle in case people are interested.
Okay, cheers.
Join. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Please do weigh in on which of the competitions you prefer, and have a good weekend. And I guess we'll see you all next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye everyone. See you.
See you.
See you later.
Take care.